Welcome back to Faith IRL. And for those of you who are over the age of 30, that means faith in real life. Just wanted you to know that. We have been working through the book of James throughout the entire year of 2025 thus far, and we will wrap that up, honestly, in the last Sunday of this year. We're going to be doing a message to round out the book of James. This is the half-brother of Jesus who did not believe in his brother as being the Savior of the world until after the resurrection, and then after the resurrection, he was one of the key proponents. He died as a martyr, saying that his brother had lived, died, and come back to life. It all goes back to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This guy was so committed to Jesus, he was known as Old Camel Knees, meaning that he spent a lot of time praying for his church family. I will not say that I have calluses on my knees praying for my church family, but I pray for you all the time. I really do. Have I told you lately that I love you, church, because I love you so much, and I want you to be like Jesus. I want to be like Jesus. Let's keep pursuing him. If you didn't catch all the first parts, and we're in part 9 today, if you haven't caught the first 8 encounters in the book of James, you can go to the Church Center app. They're in the archive, and each one of them, of course, builds on the one before. How many of you have had some wonderful encounters with people this past week? It was just so great. You like, my life was better because of that. Okay, let's also see a show of hands. How many of you knew that God was testing your character because of the encounters you had with somebody this week? Okay. Yeah, there you go. And half of them were at church, right? That's what church is for. It's not for perfect people. If you're perfect, you do not fit here. We are a colossal collection of moral foul-ups, and we're trying to follow Jesus as best we know how. Every day, you will encounter different kinds of people. You will encounter very delightful people, then you will turn right around and deal with very difficult people. Some are inspiring, and some, I would say, in our day and time, a lot of people are irritating. I won't say that it shows up on Main Street, Cortez, while I'm driving, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Fascinating people, as well as frustrating people. There are some people who try to intimidate you. That's usually just an issue of they are unsure of themselves. But anyway, I just want you to think through all the people that you typically deal with and some that actually pop into your life and you didn't expect them. You'll encounter lots and lots of different people. My point, and James's point that he's talking about today, is that most of our problems come because of personality conflicts. Life, just get this down, it's not about money, it's not about success or fame or notoriety or having the most fun that you can. Life is honestly about relationships. That's what it comes down to. If I am standing at your graveside doing your funeral, I promise that the things I will say will be true to this, and that is not a single person that I've been with when they were dying said, "Would you please go and get my trophies," or "Would you please go and get my checkbook?" But they will say, "Is there any way you can reach out to the people that I love?" It's all about relationships. Focus on your relationships. But with relationships comes personality conflicts, because we tend to see the world not as it really is, but as we are. And that's why sometimes if people aren't like us, it's tough to get along. But it is possible. It is possible. Even though it's tough, and that doesn't make it wrong, it's just you've got to understand what you need to be doing. I will also say this, and one of the reasons I say that life is all about the relationships is because when your relationships are bad, then your life stinks. That's when people come to talk to me. Not because I'm anything special, but it's kind of like doctors. People go see the preacher or the doctor when they're not feeling well. So I'm just saying, if your relationships are bad, you're probably feeling some sort of misery, no matter how smart or rich or good-looking you may be. That is why it is very, very important that we all learn to get along. And one sermon is not going to do that. One lesson is not going to do it. But I will tell you the stuff I'm giving you today, I've practiced, I've learned from other people. More importantly, it's God's Word that gives us the guidance, and you can trust God's Word implicitly. It's been around for a long time, and it has proven to be trustworthy. So if you have a printed copy, if you have it on the Bible app, the YouVersion Bible app, open that up. It's there on your notes. We are talking about a section that he didn't write it in chapters, but the book of James, the things that he wrote to his church family and to Christians at large, we get to use it. It's in chapter 3, and we're looking at this passage of verses 13 through 18. And what he's dealing with is this is how you relate wisely to other people. And you can try and, prove him wrong. But the funny thing is, if you try and prove him wrong, you're going to prove him right. He's right on the money with all this. You can read the whole passage for yourself. We're kind of going to break it down a little bit as we go. But the key verse is the 18th verse. And that key verse says, those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace, and they will reap a harvest of goodness. There's a translation called the Phillips translation. J.B. Phillips, very wise man, did a translation from the Greek into the English. And his interpretation of that last phrase, he says, you plant seeds of peace in other people, and you also plant them in yourself. So if you've got this capacity, if you've got this power, if you've got this influence to be able to plant seeds, then be a peacemaker. Plant seeds of peace in your own life and in the life of other people, and you will reap some really, really good things. He's saying that every day in every relationship, both through your actions and through your words, you're planting seeds. So this is a fun game. Have you ever stopped, like on a Sunday, to think back over all the words that you said this past week? For some of us, and I am the captain of this club, that is a major undertaking because I talk all the time. Thousands and thousands of words. My family says, when you die, they're going to have to beat your lips to death. It's because you talk all the time. Okay. If you think back over all the words you said, were they seeds of peace? Were there any of your words that were planting things that you're going to reap a harvest and it ain't going to be peace? You got to latch on to those simple things because we're planting through our words and through our actions and attitudes toward other people. You're planting seeds of there's a possibility of planting seeds of anger or jealousy. You may actually be planting some things that actually do come back as a harvest of peace. You have that opportunity, but you've got to be wise in how to do this. Maybe you plant seeds in other people of confidence because it's okay to give people a good word. You'll never encourage someone so much that they will say, "Would you please stop encouraging me?" Those words just don't come out. But you could also be using your words and your actions and your attitudes to plant insecurity in people because sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it, or sometimes it's the fact that you should have said something and you didn't say anything at all. Aren't you glad you came to church today? It feels so uplifting at this point, right? Okay. Maybe you had the opportunity and you did the right thing and you planted seeds of hope in somebody because you got to have hope to cope, y'all. I will say this, whatever seeds you're planting, you will inevitably reap what you sow. That's just the law of the harvest. So my question and what I want us to deal with and what James is talking about, how can you learn to plant seeds of peace? And this is very practical advice. You can use it. I've lived by it for a long, long time, and it remains true. You need to be planting the right seeds so that you can have peaceful relationships, and that way you see a harvest of peace. The answer to how you do this is in one word, and there's no fill in the blank for this, but I will simply say wisdom is it. And I don't mean smarts. Have you ever noticed there are a lot of smart people that just really don't have a clue? Because there is a difference between knowing about the facts or knowing something, but that's not wisdom. Wisdom, honestly, is seeing life from God's perspective. And the only way you can see it from his perspective is if you figure out a way in your life to spend time with him, to see what he has to say, to observe how he observes the world. What did he plan? What is his purpose? You've got to learn to be wise in the way that you interact with other people. A lot of us have, at least through some seasons of our life, and some of you are still in that season, you live your relationship life like a pinball machine. It's like, I'll just bounce into that, and then I'll bounce into this, and then I'll bounce into that. It's like, that's not wise. There's too much going on. There's too much at stake. Learn to be wise in the way that you interact with people because we often treat people in very foolish ways. I know sometimes you can get so intense, and yet you do things that provoke people, and you get the exact opposite response than the one you are so anxious to see. Because the intensity of your emotion or your desire in your relationships is not what matters. It's the direction, not the intention. You've got to figure out, how do I learn God's wisdom so that I can have wisdom in my relationships? And like I said, don't confuse the smarts and the wisdom. Very smart people can be foolish. Here's what I would also say. And I didn't say, it's not a quote from me. Scripture tells us that knowledge is good. Get as much of it as you possibly can, but be very careful, because knowledge puffs up. Another translation of that particular passage says knowledge tends to give people a big head. I'm not going to take that personally, because I don't think that's what it meant. That, God, your head is so big, and your body is so small. Knowledge causes pride if you're not careful. But wisdom, and we will see this, James actually says it, wisdom does not create pride. Wisdom actually creates humility. And remember, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Y'all tracking with me? Okay, he defines 3 different things. He defines what wisdom is. He then also says, I want to show you how it differs from human wisdom, because that word gets thrown around like, well, I'm really wise. I'm a wise guy. And then the third thing, and this is where it gets very practical, he shows how you operate with it. How do you live wisely? So his definition, he says, in a sense, wisdom is a lifestyle. It's how you live your life. Really has very little to do with intelligence, but has everything to do with your relationships, and it also has everything to do with your character. The verse that we start off with here is James 3, verse 13, and he says, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" This is a rhetorical question. Who is wise and understanding among you? And his readers, if they dare, maybe somebody goes, ooh, me. I'm just saying, when you're dealing with James, don't hold up your hand. It's kind of like being in the military. Do not volunteer. Okay. He says, if you're wise, he says, let him show it. Let them show it by their good life. By deeds done in humility. Humility that comes from wisdom. Those are very simple words. They're not difficult to understand, but boy, are they loaded with impact. He says, do you consider yourself to be wise and understanding in life and in relationships? He says, and this is what James is known for. He was from Missouri. He's always saying, show me. Okay? He says, let that person show me that he has that wisdom and that understanding, and I will see it in their good life, the pattern of a good life, and the deeds that they do with humility. Because he says, that's when I know, because all of that comes from wisdom. If you go back to the first part of this writing that he gave to his church, this first part of the book of James, you get a full definition of God's wisdom. But like I said, if he were preaching today, he says, who's wise and understanding? And if you were fool enough to hold up your hand, dumb enough to say, I am, he would say, prove it. Prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. Show me. Show me your wisdom by the way that you live. In other words, and I wrote this down because I don't know why I'm obsessed with lips today. Wisdom is not displayed by your lips. It is displayed by your life. Everybody can talk a good game. This is not a matter of your words. It is a matter of your works. Now, you can't do enough works to get in good with God. James has already established that. The root of our salvation is Jesus, but the fruit of our salvation is all these things he's talking about. It's how you get along with other people that actually show how wise you really are. So if you're doing a test for yourself, you're doing a wisdom quotient test, think about, how well do I get along with other people? Do I have a lot of static in my relationship? In my relationships, think about it. Maybe it's time to make some adjustments, because it is a way of life. It is a lifestyle. It's not something you do just on Sunday. You do it every day. It's your character. It's who you are in the dark. Then he goes on to the second part, and that is, he says the lack of wisdom is what causes problems. And he says it causes all kinds of problems. So if there is anyone who's within the sound of my voice, if you've got problems, there's probably a lack of wisdom involved somewhere. I'm going to read this. It's not on the screen. I just want you to see it with your mind's eye. I want you to hear it. I want, just like it would have been shared with them. He says, because this picks up where we just left off with verse 13, moves into 14, 15, and 16. He says, if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't boast about that, like that's something to be proud of, is what he's saying. And also, don't deny the truth that you are dealing with bitter envy and selfish ambition. Because he says that's what the world calls wisdom. But he says such wisdom does not come down from heaven. It's not heavenly. It's not godly. It's a make-believe. It's a pretend. He says, so if you harbor bitter envy, selfish ambition in your hearts, please don't boast about it and deny the truth that it's there, because such wisdom does not come down from heaven. He says it's actually earthly, meaning it's this brokenness in us all. He says it's unspiritual, and the last phrase, he says it's sometimes even of the devil. James, would you just go ahead and tell us what you really mean? Because I'm just telling you, the guy cuts no slack. So you're saying the world, the flesh, and the devil are always trying to trip me up. He's like, absolutely, and you need to be aware of that so you can be on guard for it. Doesn't mean that you have to see a demon behind every bush or on every shoulder. It's just there is a war going on, and we are trying to pursue Jesus so that his character forms inside of us. You've got to realize that there is an enemy, and he is after you. He goes on, he says, because where you have or where you find this bitter envy and this selfish ambition, that's where you will find disorder and every evil practice. Again, Mr. Phillips translated the New Testament. His translation of that phrase, he says, for wherever you find jealousy and rivalry, he's contrasting that with God's wisdom. He said, wherever you find jealousy and rivalry, you will also find, and it's in your notes and on the screen, you will find disharmony and all other kinds of evil. This is serious business. This is what we're talking about in faith IRL. We're not just talking about, oh, I have faith. You got to have faith, faith, faith. You got to have faith. No, I'm saying you know that Jesus is who he says he is. He will do what he said he will do. You lean into him and you try to develop his character with the power that he gives you. The point I'm trying to make in this moment is a lack of wisdom. And you could say, well, I know about that, but I'm going to ignore that. Well, that makes you ignorant. Don't do that. If this is new to you, then open your eyes and open your heart and say, well, I don't want to live that way. How am I supposed to do it? Because it seems like I'm lacking wisdom. Because I just want you to examine your own life. If you lack wisdom, chances are you're seeing a lot of disorder, chaos, and confusion in your home, in your work life. Just ask yourself, is my life basically a constant mess? Then I better check my wisdom temperature. I better assess the wisdom quotient in my life. Okay, James is good about diagnosing the problem, but then he also says, but I've also got stuff that will help you. And this is where we shift gears. James is going to help you raise your wisdom quotient, whatever score you have on your wisdom assessment test. He says that you can know if you are wise. He said there is a way to know if you are wise and how you are relating to other people. And it's found in this one verse, verse 17. And we're going to pick it apart phrase by phrase because it's so packed with good stuff. He lists the characteristics of wise people. And I want to be a wise person. This isn't on your notes in its full form. I'm going to read it to you. He says, contrasting that we just got done with, the jealousy and the rival and the bitter, all that. He says, but wisdom, especially like he said, God's wisdom that comes from heaven is, and he says, first of all, it's pure, and then peace-loving, and considerate, and submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, and it is impartial and sincere. 6 things. Let's dive into it. How can I relate wisely to other people? Number 1, if I'm wise, he says, I won't compromise my integrity. Might want to write that down. And I put it in first person. If I'm wise, I will not compromise my own integrity. The verse says, the wisdom that comes from heaven, which comes from where God rules, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. The word pure, undefiled, authentic, uncorrupted. If you can find a mountain stream that has not had anybody contribute anything else to it, that's the purity of it. That's what we're talking about. If you go over to another disciple, his name was John, and he wrote to the church that he pastored. In the first letter, it's called 1 John, and you look in chapter 3, verse 3, he refers to, if you really want to know what purity is, look at Jesus' character. If you want to see purity, look at Jesus. That's what purity looks like. If I'm wise, he's saying, if I am going to live my life with wisdom, I'm going to relate wisely to other people, I'm going to be authentic. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to be somebody that I'm not. And yet in our culture, we've been trained that under certain circumstances, we have to be inauthentic. We have to mold ourselves according to what everybody else expects us to be. He's also making the point, like, if I'm wise and I'm going to be true to my own integrity, I'm not going to cheat you, I'm not going to manipulate you, I'm not going to deceive you. I'm going to be a person of integrity. It has to do with, there are no parts. It's all one integrated thing, integrity, because relationships are built on trust. Every single relationship you have is built on trust. And if you do not have trust, then you don't have a relationship. You have an arrangement. Here's an interesting statistic. Dr. Leonard Keeler is the man who invented the lie detector machine. He did a lot of testing before it went public, and then after it went public. And I'm just telling you, after he tested somewhere around 25,000 people with the lie detector test, he concluded that people are basically dishonest. Had a lot of work there. I could have told him that. A whole lot easier than that. 2 books of wisdom in the Bible. James is in the New Testament. Proverbs, the book of wisdom in the Old Testament. Proverbs 10:9 says, the man of integrity, the person of integrity, walks securely. What it's talking about is they live their life securely. They don't have to look around who's looking, who's listening, because they don't pretend to be one person with this group and another person with that group. They're just the same. A man of integrity walks securely because you're never afraid of being found out, because it's what you see is what you get. I would say, in my experience, no one has a good enough memory to actually be a good habitual liar. Because it's tough to remember what lie you told to them when you get over here, and then you tell them another lie, and then you come back over here. It's like, oh, what did I tell them? Like, nobody's got a good enough memory to do that. So if you live a life of integrity, you get confidence, you walk securely in your relationships. That's just one thing. Examine, are you being true to your own integrity? Here's another thing. If I'm wise, I won't antagonize your anger. Come on, put him up. Let's fight. If I'm wise, I won't antagonize your anger. I'm going to guard against intentionally making other people angry. Why do you go around picking fights? Because some of us do. Work at maintaining harmony in your relationships, whether it's at work or at home. Work at it. Don't always be looking for a fight. And some of you just love the fight. Here's what he said. Next phrase. He said, wisdom is peace-loving. I want all eyes on me, okay? Because I'm about to ask you a question. Do you know anyone who's always arguing and always looking for a fight? Don't look at them. You look up here. Right up here. That's up here. It's not your job to be their Holy Spirit. Yeah, a lot of people do wrestle with this whole idea. I heard about a guy one time who was so argumentative, he only ate food that disagreed with him. That's how much he loved the fight. But I'm saying, all kidding aside, if you are wise, if you are practicing trying to build the character of Christ in your life, if you're trying to be a wise person, in humility, you have to learn how not to antagonize other people's anger. Don't poke the bear. Proverbs, again, wisdom from the Old Testament, Proverbs 20, verse 3. Any fool can start arguments. The wise thing is to stay out of them. So don't be any fool. So a good question here is, what causes arguments? How does this actually work? Do you know? Do you know? If you don't, you need to learn this so you can avoid them. You need to know what's coming. 3 primary things that cause arguments. Number 1, comparing. I don't think there's a place to write that in, but I bet you can find some place in the margin. This is what you might hear or have heard throughout your life is, you're just like your... I didn't say mother. Somebody else fill that in. See, I just told you. Because sometimes you're just like your father. You're just like your brother. And usually it's said with that tone, and it usually has nothing to do with the fine attributes that those people possess. Or you'll hear, why can't you be like... Or, my first husband... It's like, those are just comparing. It's not fair to compare. 2 Corinthians 10:12 says, it is definitely unwise to compare to other people. Just don't do that. Another thing that causes arguments is condemning. When you say to people, it's all your fault. In reality, that's not true. I would also say in this whole condemning, it's you always, blah, 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 or you never, blah, 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 blah. Well, neither one of those is true. But we get, as my grandmother would say, I still don't know what it means, but she's like, people get their tail feathers over the dash. I'm like, okay. Or people, it's just this idea of you should be better. And it's coming from other people who should be better. I once heard in terms of marriage, you can bury a marriage with a lot of little digs. So comparing, condemning, and then another one is contradicting, and it comes in so many different forms, and it can be funny in some ways, but it's also very irritating, and Leanne and I worked hard not to do this to one another, because if you're together long enough, you tell a lot of the same stories over and over again. Just if you're younger than me, just okay, it's fine. You're telling it, and it's like, hey, you remember that time? And you're trying to tell your friends, we went to that place, and we were driving, the Ford that we were in, and the other one goes, it wasn't a Ford. It was a Chrysler. You're going, number one, it's irritating when you interrupt me like that. And what difference does it make what car we were in? I was just filling in. It's like, no, it was blue. No, it was green. It's like, stop. Some things are just not worth that kind of fight. And like James is saying, if you're wise, you just won't sweat the small stuff. That kind of stuff doesn't matter. Because let's just be honest. Have you ever done anything stupid in anger? Have you ever had to go back and literally repair something because of your anger? Okay. Happens to me, happens to you, happens to everyone. And the remedy, James says, is to go and get more of God's wisdom. Proverbs 14:29 says, a wise man controls his temper. Why? Because he knows that anger causes mistakes. If you know it's coming, then get ready for it. Figure out a better way. Don't just keep doing it just because it feels good. He says, now, we've got to go on. If I'm practicing wisdom in my relationships, I'm not going to compromise my own integrity. I will not antagonize your anger. And number 3, he says, if I'm wise, I won't minimize your feelings. I will not minimize your feelings. Because gang, feelings are feelings. They're neither right nor wrong. They're just feelings. And God gave them to us to be indicators for things. But you're not supposed to follow them. But if a person's feeling something, they're feeling it. That's it. You don't have to minimize what they're feeling. In verse 17, he says, wisdom is considerate. The word considerate has been translated in the Good News translation as gentle. In the Living Bible, it is translated as courteous. The best concordances will go down roads of it has to do with you're mindful of someone else's feelings. You're aware of the feelings of other people. And here's a common mistake, and this is also practical. That's what I say. He was doing this long before there was even a discipline called psychology. He was teaching us things that are amazing 2,000 years ago. The common mistake is that we all make is, if I don't feel the way you feel, then your feelings must be stupid. And that's just not right. Because like I said, feelings are feelings. But we get so up on our high horse about it, it's like, well, if I don't feel the way you feel, then your feelings are illogical. It makes absolutely no sense. Your feelings, they don't count because they're irrational. They're silly. You're just stupid that you feel that way. It's like, that's not true. Feelings are feelings. I'm feeling that way. I may have bad intel to begin with, but I still feel that way. And James says, wise people do not minimize other people's feelings. Now, you don't get stuck there. This is not about just sitting, cross-legged in a circle and singing Kumbaya and let's feel our feelings, but you don't minimize other people's feelings. Proverbs 15:4 says, kind words bring life, but cruel words crush your spirit. I have lived that, both sides of that, sad to say. I don't have to accept your feelings, but I can understand them. See, typically what we do when we react to other people's feelings or emotions is we say things that hurt them because we don't stop and think what we're saying. We say words that belittle them. We want to push their feelings down. Our words push them down because in some way we feel like we're lifting ourselves up, and so we become condescending. And none of us like people who lift their nose and look down at us. And yet that's what we do. We shouldn't be condescending. We should be considerate. Be considerate of somebody else's feelings. It's like, you don't have to agree with it. It's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Cool. All right. It can be subtle. I don't know if you at your house have ever played My Day Can Beat Your Day. Yep. Come home from work and you meet up after the end of the day. It's like, boy, it was just an awful day. Oh, you think you had a bad day? Well, let me tell you about mine. You go, well, that sympathy lasted 1/10 of a microsecond. Thanks so much. I'm just telling you, I've learned from experience, because Leanne and I have been together 40 some odd years. It's okay to allow your spouse to be tired without having to prove that you're more tired than they are. Just remember this, good words. If you care, you'll be aware. Okay? Okay, we've gone 1, 2, 3. Let's do number 4. If I'm wise, I won't criticize your suggestions. That's what James gives us next. I won't criticize your suggestions. I think some of the best advice I ever heard, and it is true, is that you can learn from anyone, even people you disagree with. Has to do with your attitude. A wise person will learn from anybody, including people that they disagree with, because a wise person he's not going to be defensive. A wise person is going to learn because she will be open to reason. A wise person She's not going to be stubborn. He's going to be willing to listen and learn. Verse 17, he literally says, wisdom is submissive. Godly wisdom, heavenly wisdom is submissive. Boy, we hate that word in our culture. Don't bring me down. Nope. The word has to do with putting ourselves under someone else in terms of authority, and just, it's okay. It's a practice you've got to get used to. The Greek word is eupythes. Let's just all speak Greek today. Come on, let's say it together. Eupythes. It's only used this one time in the whole New Testament. You can impress your friends at your next cocktail party that you know how to speak Greek, okay? In the NIV, it's translated submissive. That's what we're using in the notes. In the Revised Standard Version, it's open to reason. In the Living Bible, it is translated allows discussion. It comprises this idea of being reasonable, willing to listen, open to ideas and suggestions, because you don't have to buy into all of it, but you're willing to listen. I ask you, if you're trying to take this test and say, how's my wisdom quotient? Are you a reasonable person? Or do you say things like, hey, don't confuse me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. Or, you know what? If I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. I found this to be true both on the receiving and the giving end. Most of us hear other people's suggestion as a personal attack. And we tend to take it as personal criticism. But here's the deal, and I don't know if y'all knew it, but football is back, y'all. And I just was ODing on it yesterday. It was awesome. And while I have never played, the whole coaching thing just, Because I go back to, I don't even like basketball that much, but when Michael Jordan was playing basketball, what was his name, Phil? What's his name was his coach? Yes, Phil Jackson. Thank you. There's 3 people who watch basketball in the congregation today. It just amazed me that at that time, Michael Jordan was certifiably the best basketball player that had ever lived. And would you believe he'd go to practice? And Phil Jackson, while he had his own, trophy case of things, can you imagine saying to Michael Jordan at his peak, Mike, that thing you did, don't do it that way. Do it this way. And I'm just saying, I think Michael Jordan could have said, who do you think you are, dude? I'm Michael Jordan. It's like, hey, anybody who is open to reason, to say, would you coach me, is in a better position than what Proverbs 12:15 said. A fool thinks he needs no advice, but a wise man listens to others. James and Proverbs say if you're wise, you're going to be teachable, because a wise person can learn from anybody's suggestions. Because listen, treat it like fried chicken, y'all. You go, what does that mean? Eat the good stuff, throw the bones away. If it's true, then embrace it. Make it a part of your character. If it ain't true, toss it and forget it. It's like a new pastor, brand new pastor, wasn't dry behind the ears yet. He was preaching his first sermon at his first church, and after it was over, he's standing there shaking hands, and the guy comes by and says, Pastor, that sermon stunk. And the pastor is trying to be real open, reasonable, trying to be wise. He says, well, what didn't you like about it? He said 3 different things. Number 1, you read it. Number 2, you read it poorly. Number 3, it wasn't worth reading in the first place. The guy behind him, after that first guy had left, another guy behind him steps up, shakes the pastor's hand, and he says, listen, Pastor, don't worry about him. Don't listen to Jim. He just repeats what he hears everybody else saying. So, if you're going to try and get wisdom in your life, you won't compromise your integrity, antagonize somebody else's angers. You're not going to minimize their feelings or criticize their suggestions. He goes on to number 5. He says, if I'm wise, I won't emphasize your mistakes. In verse 17, he says, wisdom is full of mercy and good fruit. The kind of wisdom that God wants in your life will bring forth mercy and it will produce good fruit. I'm just asking you to assess your own life. When somebody trips up or fumbles in any area of their life, are you the one who's the first to jump on them and tell them they should have done a better job? Do you use everybody or anybody in your family as the butt of your jokes? Do you keep on hounding others in your life for past mistakes that have really already been dealt with? I'm trying to tell you the honest truth. That's dumb and it's foolish. Because wisdom is full of mercy. Try to figure out a way to live a life that does not emphasize the mistakes of other people. Because if I'm wise, I am not going to emphasize your mistakes. I'm going to show you mercy. There's justice, there's grace, and there's mercy. Justice is getting what the law says we deserve. And I'm talking about God's law. Grace is God giving us what we do not deserve in any measure, and somebody else paid for it. G-R-A-C-E, God's riches at Christ's expense. Mercy is not giving the punishment that was deserved that justice demanded. That's why Jesus is awesome, because he came to us with grace and mercy, even when justice needed to prevail. And justice did prevail. It prevailed in the person of Jesus Christ so you and I could be free. Proverbs 17:9 says, love forgets mistakes. Nagging about them parts even the best of friends. Nagging doesn't do any good, y'all. Stop nagging. When somebody stumbles, don't judge them. It's not your place to judge them. James 2:13 says mercy triumphs over judgment because mercy is actually more powerful than judgment or justice. James uses this phrase. He says it's full of mercy and good fruit. His companion, if you will, I mean, they didn't work side by side, but Paul was working in another area with the gospel like James was working in Jerusalem. Paul said that the good fruit is going to show up in love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. It emerges from that kind of love. Good fruit is love. It's love in action. It's not tame, it's not timid, it's in action. James says, if you're wise, don't emphasize other people's mistakes. Don't criticize their suggestions, don't minimize their feelings, don't antagonize their anger. Number 6, he says, if I'm wise, he says, I won't disguise my own weaknesses. Which goes hand in hand with this, don't emphasize their mistakes and then pretend like you don't have any. I will say it this way, the mark of a wise person is that they don't try to hide and disguise. The verse says that wisdom is impartial, this godly wisdom is impartial and it is sincere. The New International Reader's Version says it doesn't pretend to be what it is not. I love this because I don't like phony. I like real. I think you ought to give the very best you can. I think you ought to swing for the fences. That's what we do around Rock Springs. Sometimes we come up short, but I'm saying give God and everybody everything. Don't hold back. But I don't like phony. Rock Springs is a church for real people who have real sins and real hang-ups and real problems. And I'm just saying if you want to be wise, be open and honest and surrendered to Jesus. That's what we try to practice around here. The English is translated impartial and sincere. The Greek word is adiakritos and anipokritos. Okay, I know a little Greek. He runs a restaurant in Waco. No, sorry. Old joke. The root word sounds a lot like this if you say it in English, and that's hypokritos, which sounds like hypocrite, because that's exactly what it means. And it comes from Greek theater. Back in the day, a couple of thousand years ago, they'd have their plays, but they'd only have 2 or 3 actors playing all the characters in the play, and they go behind this short wall, change out their mask, come out, play the other character. By changing the masks, that's where they got their name, is the changing of the masks is hypokritos. It's an actor. It's a hypocrite. One mask for one situation, one for another. And James says if you're wise, you don't live that way. You don't disguise your weaknesses. Proverbs 13 says this: you will never succeed in life if you try to hide your sins. In other words, it's dumb to pretend like you've got your whole life together, because nobody does. Last week, and I thank you so much, Jim, for speaking up so powerfully for what God's done in your life and through your life even now. When you start telling people what your true weaknesses are, they're not shocked because they already know. But also, it's the beautiful thing that if we all will do that, when you start to admit it, that's when you give God margin to use you to help other people. It gives your problems a purpose. And I will say this in my own experience, and that is people appreciate gut-level honesty and honestly sharing where you truly are at. Because God's grace is illustrated in your struggle because they need help in their struggle. Y'all getting all this? Okay. That's it. But we're about to make a transition. I want you to think through where you score on all this so that you can make a commitment to God. And this is going to be a powerful time to make that kind of commitment, because we are going to conclude the service with sharing the Lord's Supper, communion. And it's going to be a beautiful thing. If you're not a Christ follower yet, you're not being forced or arm twisted to participate in this. It is for those who follow Christ to say, we don't ever want to forget that Jesus, you hung up for all of our hang-ups. But you also rose up from the grave to give us power to live better. So, how do you rate on this wisdom test? I'm just going to go through it right quick. Do you compromise your integrity? If that's where you're at, then make a commitment that has to do with that. And then keep hanging out here, and let's get better at it. Do you tend to antagonize other people's anger? Is that it? Is that where your weak spot is? Are you in the habit of minimizing other people's feelings? And maybe today that you just had a sudden realization. I do that all the time. I didn't realize it. Are you quick to criticize somebody else's suggestions, or do you actually allow them to share it and you give it some consideration? Do you emphasize people's mistakes? Do you try to disguise that you make mistakes? If your wisdom test, your wisdom quotient is kind of low, here's what James says to do. He said it back in chapter 1, verse 5. He said, if any of you lacks this wisdom, he says, if anybody lacks this godly wisdom, let him ask God directly. And he goes on to say, because God gives generously. He's eager to give. He's eager to give. My point in this, and please don't lose me, I know we don't have any more fill in the blanks, and I already heard 3-ring binders closing, and it's all okay. Just stick with me here. Wisdom is a gift from God. It's not something you achieve, it's something you receive. And you receive it through a relationship with Jesus Christ. I love this verse because I think it wraps up this whole idea we've been talking about today, and it certainly is a bridge into what we're going to do with communion. Paul was writing to some friends that actually he had never met, but there were churches being planted because Jesus' resurrection reached that far. And he writes to them, and he said, let me tell you, the secret sauce, the secret to this whole idea that I'm telling you about, of how to live for Jesus, the secret is Christ himself. It's not something that you know, it's someone that you know. Because he says, in him, in Jesus, lie hidden all of God's treasures of wisdom. If you want to know wisdom, you need to know Jesus. Because wisdom is literally wrapped up in a relationship of someone who is the epitome of wisdom. It's wrapped up in the person of Jesus Christ. If you want wisdom in your life, you've got to get Christ in your life. Don't just stand and hang out near him. Follow him. Listen to what he says. Do what he does. Ask questions of him. You invite him into your life. You take a second place to him. You say, I'm going to follow you. And you say things like this. Jesus, as best I know how, I want to trust you, and I am saying to you, you take me just as I am. I'm not going to clean myself up and come to you. I'm coming to you, and would you please show me how to get cleaned up? And then you keep praying, and you say, would you please teach me each day because it's a daily thing. It's not just Sundays. Teach me each day to think your thoughts through my mind. I want your thoughts because I've seen what you've said and what you want. I want your thoughts to replace the thoughts that I've had. I want the truth to push out the lies. And you keep praying and you say, teach me to be able to speak your words through my lips. And Lord, if there's any way, you give me the desire and you give me the power to help people with your power through my hands and to love other people from my heart because you have changed my heart. Now, think about this. Jesus did not compromise his integrity. He was without sin while he was here. He did not antagonize our anger. Even to this day, he treats you with respect, allows you to choose what you want to do. He will not minimize your feelings, criticize your suggestions, and he will not emphasize your mistakes. You can go and look it up with people like the woman at the well in John 4. And he most certainly will not disguise his weaknesses because he ain't got none. And that's what makes communion that much more important. Because it's when Christ followers remember that he came and died, and once for all, he paid for all the sin of all mankind, past, present, and future, so that you and I wouldn't have to. And then he gave us the privilege of having a right relationship with God, and he signed that contract with his blood. That's why I'm going to pray. I'm going to read the passage from 1 Corinthians. I'm going to invite you to participate in this communion if you so desire, and we will conclude this service. Let me pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. We're just so gifted with these things of being able to look at your word and what you set aside for us, because through it we discover that you have a matchless wisdom and you have truth that surpasses all the truth we claim to have. But we also see that wisdom and truth are only available when we are in relationship with your Son, Jesus, the Christ. So I'm asking you in this moment, as we've gathered here today, would you please renew the hearts of people who have been trying to live by faith? They just need a shot in the arm, a boost. But there's also, Lord, we want to welcome those who are putting their faith onto you, Jesus, for the very first time right now. And I pray this in the powerful name of Jesus. Amen.